Welcome, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar on the new solution from 1E. It's 1E for Microsoft Intune. Today, the speakers will be myself, Josh Thompson, Director of Product Marketing. I'm really just setting the stage for everyone here. The experts today that are going to walk everyone through what we've come up with and show it and get you all the details that you need about the new solution are Jason Keogh, our Vice President of Solutions at 1E, and Ron Crumbaker, our Vice President of Strategic Success. All right, the agenda. So the agenda, I'm going to go through a couple slides on the overview of 1E and our idea of DEX and DEX in the market and who we are and what we do. And then from there, I'm going to hand it off to Jason to introduce the 1E for Microsoft Intune solution. And then we'll go into a demo where we're going to see detailed information about how all this works together and answer your questions about how it actually acts and what it looks like in the real product. And then at the end, we're going to have a question and answer session. For the question and answer session, during the presentation, please input your questions into the pane. And some of them, if we're able to, we'll answer them right away, but I'll collect those throughout the presentation, Jason and Ron's presentation. And then I'll come back on screen at the end in the question and answer and tee up your questions to the experts here. So at 1E, our purpose is we reimagine technology, how technology serves people, and create new ways for IT to shape the future of work. And what that means is we are thinking about DEX and how the digital employee experience, how IT can implement the digital employee experience to create these new ways and shape the future of work. With that, there's three core principles that we think about across the platform. And how we bring how we bring our DEX platform to the market and how we bring solutions to the market. All DEX solutions should provide a better experience. It should help IT be more secure, and it should be business aligned. So there should be hard ROI in what IT is doing and what you are doing with the DEX platform and the DEX tools you have. You should be able to add security and be able to address security issues with the platform. And of course, digital employee experience wouldn't be digital employee experience without improving experience. And so these three key items, we think about this and we bring this through all our product offerings, all our solution offerings, and it's the core tenets of how we think about the DEX platform that we offer. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jason to talk about and introduce 1E for Microsoft Intune solution.
Thanks, Josh. So yeah, just before I move on to the next slide, sticking with this one, I mean, Intune, it's used to make sure that your users get new software and patches and so on. So it immediately hits the first two of these. If your users aren't getting the latest version of software, they're not going to have the better experience, right? If their devices are not getting patched, well, you're not going to be making things more secure. You're going to make things less secure. And if things are less secure and your users don't have the right tools, then you're not business aligned. So essentially, 1E for Microsoft Intune is making sure that when you're using Intune to maintain continuous compliance and control deployments, that it works and it works better. We address some of the most commonly found problems with Intune and essentially automate them away or give you visibility to problems and enable you to fix them faster and easier. And that's what Ron's going to take us through when we get into the demo. He and I are going to sort of demo that together. So it's really about empowering the organization to have a standardized baseline. And it says rapidly respond to critical issues. We really want to ensure client health. We want to make sure there are no issues, but when there are issues, we want to respond to them quickly. So, why on earth did we, create a solution for Microsoft Intune? So Ron, where did this come from as a concept and how do we identify that we wanted to do this?
So starting sometime late last year, we started talking to a lot of customers about their journey to Intune. We have a great base of config manager centric customers, and they started talking to us about issues that they were having or things that they wish they could do differently within Intune. And that started the ball rolling for us as far as to really hone into how can we give our customer a better experience using our 1E platform alongside Microsoft Intune. And after talking to numerous customers, we got a skeleton of where we wanted to go and how we wanted to get there. So we started working through those, and then we validated a lot of that information with some of the Microsoft MVPs, which have been a tremendous help for us, a great resource, a great group of people that provided us feedback, provided us directions on where we wanted to go and how to get there. We talked to the analysts, we talked to Gartner, we talked to Forrester, we talked to other customers. The market in itself has been pushing for to move to Intune. And then Gartner released this top 10 gotchas of Microsoft Intune. The IDs on the screen. It helped validate the direction that we were going in, and really what our customers were saying as well, and what the MVPs were saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite unusual actually for Gartner to make a move like that, to say, look, here's a list of gotchas for a given product, especially one that's so fundamental as Intune, and with such a strong support from Microsoft behind it. Now, we're a Microsoft partner, and we launched this 1E for Microsoft Intune with Microsoft at an event, I don't know, a few weeks ago in London. Our CEO was there, sort of in a room full of people that Microsoft brought along when we launched this together. Intune is great, and it fills a niche and it delivers value, but the problem is when it doesn't work, you're dependent on it for some really critical functions. So, that's a problem. So what we're doing with this is really trying to fix that up. So on the next slide here, we're going to look at what are those key elements that we look for to try and help with when we're actually looking at Intune. So Ron, do you want to run us through these?
Yeah, so Intune Client Health, it is still based on Windows. Still, there is WMI components that are there. So we want to ensure that the client is healthy and that it's manageable. If it's unhealthy, you can't manage the device. So we want to make sure that we have healthy Intune clients. We want to make sure that Intune is syncing with a real-time flexibility. Microsoft does a very good job. The first hour that you install Intune on it, it checks in every 15 minutes. And then every hour after that for the first 8 hours. And then after that first initial day, it checks in every 8 hours. So what we want to do is perform syncs where it's mission critical. If there is a 0 day that comes out and you need to get a new policy out there, you want the flexibility to know when that policy is going to get deployed. We also look at, secure boot, antivirus, making sure that those critical services are functioning. They're the way that you want them configured. They're compliant to how you want them done. Make sure OneDrive is syncing. And then obviously.
Well, just before we move off of that
Yep.
one, I mean, when I was getting involved with this with Ron, I was like, well, BitLocker and OneDrive and so on, they're not Intune, right? And why are they there? And I'll paraphrase what you said, Ron, is like, they may not be Intune, but the people who care about Intune and look after Intune typically care about these things and look after these things as well. And some of the things they're trying to do with Intune, where maybe they're having some problems, actually relate to these things as well. So if we can handle these areas and deliver value in these areas, then it's delivering value to the people who are looking after Intune, and it's making your life easier. And that's essentially a solution, is to try and fix a pain and make life easier. So that's what we're trying to do. So yeah. Patching visibility then.
Yeah, and one thing on the OneDrive piece too. For a lot of customers, one of the first workloads that they moved to Intune was to autopilot. And autopilot gives the ability to wipe your drive, reload the OS on the machine. And if OneDrive isn't configured properly and not syncing, you're going to lose all the data, and you're going to have upset customers yourself, or an upset user. So we want to make sure that we monitor OneDrive and make sure that it's set up and it is syncing, so that you're confident when you leverage autopilot that you're going to have a successful outcome and there's not going to be any data missing. And then obviously patching, we want to make sure that your machines are secure, that they're compliant, and to give you the visibility, the insights into where your patches stand today, how healthy is your overall environment, and give you the ability to deploy patches if for whatever reason they might have failed, or They just haven't been applied yet. And then normalized inventory gives you the confidence that you can build your management groups, collection of devices, the way that you want to build them and target them specifically, so that you're making the best choices that you can to have the less impact on users and interruptions. And then it also gives you the ability to control who has access to do what on on a group of machines, single machines. You know, we have a very rich RBAC model to ensure that you know, you can configure your administrators, your users to have the ability to set, you know, do certain features on certain machines or not anything on any machine. So we want to make sure we give you that granularity to build your management groups and your collection of devices the way that you see fit.
So we're going to go into the demo now, and I'll be sort of clicking around, and Ron will be dragging me around the screen a bit, you know, go here, go there, do this, do that. And we'll be interacting a bit, just asking questions. I'm going to give you a very quick intro to the Oney platform if you haven't seen it before. So this is a solution that runs on top of the Oney platform. If you don't have a Oney platform license, you can just buy this solution and have this solution and nothing else implemented. If you do have a Oney platform license and it covers all the modules that you're required, you can reach out to sales and see, can you get this solution implemented in your organization? So essentially the Oney platform, in this, you see here some of these machines have Intune in their name, because that's exactly what it's like in the real world. You know, we've got some test machines here connected up to a lab, and we can go in, you know, in these platforms, we can go into any one of these machines. We don't store things in here like the resource utilization or network connectivity or anything like that. But when we click, you know, into this area, we can go and it runs a command to pull back that data, you know, as part of our platform against our client and shows it in real time. So we don't have the network utilization of those devices stored, but when I click the button, it goes and retrieves it and shows it. So the Oney platform is a real-time platform for understanding what's going on devices and then actually for making changes to those devices. So where do you want to go first, Ron, in terms of talking about this Intune functionality?
Yeah, let's go to endpoint troubleshooting, and we're going to cover off, endpoint automation, because we're going to cover off some of the Intune client health. So one thing that we have done over the years is the ability for MemCM or config manager client health. So we took that work that we did there and incorporated it into what we're doing with Intune. So if you go down to administration and you look at the policies, this is a policy, is just a collection of rules. Rules can be made up of check rules or fixed rules. And within here, we have 38 predefined rules that we have set up. And this is also where we're going to talk about critical services and our Intune client health. So if you look down through here, you're going to see some that have WMI in there. So we want to ensure that WMI is working correctly and that it's not corrupt. It doesn't have any issues with WMI. So we're checking that. We also have fixed rules, some of which you'll see on the right-hand side that they're disabled or not enabled. So there'll be a green checkbox for the ones that are enabled. We disabled this in our labs because we're using modern auth for this lab. So we didn't want to get a bunch of errors, but we monitor things like secure boot. We monitor things like when's the last time patching was done in the last 7 days. Are my machines compliant in that standpoint? We look at security, the firewall service, make sure that the firewall service is configured properly and that it's running. You know, I know that I'm causing Jason to scroll up and down quite a lot, but there's just so much that we do within our endpoint automation.
So check this out. This is the
Yeah.
same list. So here you can see the list. And again, checks and fixes. The check will tell you whether it's compliant or not. And so all these machines that are green are compliant, and all these machines indeed are not compliant. So BitLocker is not enabled on any of them.
Yep.
Now we can put in a fix, and if we have a fix, then the fix will make sure that it is enabled. It will turn on things, right? So, and then you can see if things are compliant or not. And in any one of these, you can essentially drill in and see what the history is for that particular thing for any given device. So, you know, if that service wasn't in the correct state, this was it turning on or off or whatever it might be. So it's really powerful to be able to just see it. And you have the compliance on so this TPM is enabled on, I guess, one of these machines and not on the other three. So, you know, you can immediately drill in and see, well, which machine is TPM on and which ones do I need to turn it on. So, you know, really, really powerful stuff here.
Yes, and you get a overall dashboard. So if you go up to overview, you can see an overall dashboard of each of the policies that we have. So up in the right-hand corner, you have 1E for Microsoft Intune, 1E for MCM Client Health, Nomad Health, and Windows Client Health as well. But you can drill into each one of those holistically, or you can drill by the policies under the reports on the left-hand side. So we look at the rule status, your device status. We look at the rule remediation. So you understand how many times did a check fix rule work, how many remediations happened, what it was, what the status was, what did it fix, did it error out? So it gives you a lot of granular control of finding issues within your organization. What we typically see a lot of our clients do is they will set a whole bunch of check rules first, and then they'll slowly turn on fix rules. That way they're not overloading machines, they're testing and verifying before they implement the fixes. So those are some of the things that are capable of doing with the endpoint automation around the client health and the critical service compliance. Now let's bounce over. Oh, yes.
Before we move off there, I mean, all rules are essentially, they're automations. It's under endpoint automation, so it's obvious, but they're trigger based essentially. So a trigger could be check this every 24 hours, or a trigger could be react to a changing of this registry key, or react to a change in state of that service. So if the service stops, check if it should be stopped, and if it shouldn't be stopped, start it. If, every 24 hours, check to see if the WMI, is corrupt or is okay, the repository. If this registry key changes, that indicates someone is maybe doing something they shouldn't, or an update has been pushed out that's switching something off that shouldn't be switched off, switch it back on again. And triggers are real time. So as soon as the problem occurs, if it's not the state that we want it to be in, we will literally react within milliseconds to repair that. So it shouldn't have any impact. The fact, and then check if the machines are syncing, and if they're not syncing, you can take an action to make sure that they sync again, and so forth. So there's also instructions. These are all rules. So rules are based on timers or triggers, and instructions then are run when a human wants to do something. So maybe when you see a problem here and you want to go and investigate further, or you want to go and actually take an action manually, a check is out, and you want to manually fix it rather than having an automation to fix it. Can we jump in and have a look at the instructions, Ron? Is there anything else you want to go through before we go?
No. Yeah, that's perfect. Let's do a switch up and go to endpoint troubleshooting. So what we want to do now is look at what comes out of the box for this 1E for Microsoft Intune. There's 23 instructions. They're both checks and they're both fixes, they're actions, or they are questions. So questions will have a little question mark beside it, and actions will have a little gear wrench. So if you just drop that down, you can see the first one is an action. The next ones are questions. So you can really dig into what you want to do. So one thing that we want to do, and we have our lab set up in a scenario where there's a 0 day that was applied, and we want to go and look to see when's the last time the sync time happened for Intune. So Jason's going to run this instruction. He's going to target all 13 devices in our lab, but the ones will only return back if they have the Intune client that's on it. So if you look through the results, they're coming back in real time. So when the question goes out and is asked, the information comes right back and gives us the information. So you can see that the last sync time on demo box 2 was 1456 plus 200. So that was, less than an hour ago. And so now if that one was out of compliant and it returned a value back that was, a few days owed, you could follow that question up with an action to say, let's trigger a sync on these devices. So Jason, just pick one of those devices. Let's do a follow-up action on that device, and then just type in trigger or sync if you want. Yeah, and then trigger. So this will give you the ability to trigger a sync within your organization. And what we did here, if you notice, there's the word stagger seconds. So what we want to do is ensure that we're not overloading your WAN by having 100,000 devices all sync at the same time, but we want to stagger those out randomly between 0 and, for this instance, 300 seconds. Or
so if you've got one device, it's fine to put in just wait a second and do it.
Yes,
and then that'll either go immediately or wait a second. If you've got like 50 or 60 devices, you might put in 10 seconds. You don't want them all going at once, but they can stagger over a little time. If you've got thousands of devices, give it a bit of spread, because each machine, when they go to sync, now you shouldn't ever have a situation where you've got 100,000 machines that are out of sync. That's just weird.
Yes.
But you can find the set of machines which are not synced. You can target those, maybe 100, maybe 500, whatever, X number of machines. Give it what you think is an appropriate stagger time. It reminds you to set it because it's there as a variable, right? And then away you go. So in this case, I'll say 1 second and I'll perform the action. Now, when you perform actions, they're going to make a change, and you can change the workflow on actions, but the default here is that if it's something that's going to make something change, in this case a sync, it's going to need to be approved. So Ron is logged in. I can't approve my own actions, even though I've got a godlike power user. It doesn't matter. I can't approve my own requests. So Ron has a browser over there. And tell us when you hit the button, Ron, to approve this.
Yeah. So I just clicked approve right now.
Mhm.
And now what it's done is it's going to go out and it's going to initiate a sync on the Intune client. And then, that takes 2 to 3 minutes to complete its process. But you get instant feedback on where that status is and what that is doing.
And that instant feedback, I think, is really, really important. That's what you get with this system. And it's one of the things you don't really get with Intune. So you say, I want to make this so, and you send it out. You get a response back, and you know which machines it made it so on and which machines it didn't make it so on, and you get the data back immediately. Whereas when you're looking at Intune, you send it out and the machine will check in at some stage in the next 8 hours, and we'll get it at some stage, and blah blah blah. So if you can push a sync or tell machines what to do and get feedback instantly, that's it's a nice experience.
And one of the things that are called out specifically in that top 10 gotchas, and a lot of our customers validated this as well, is the fact that you don't know when Intune is going to do what it is going to do. You hope that it does it within, a normal amount of time, but there are instances where you want to take control of that and get those syncs and those policies deployed, especially in a 0-day. And you might not be able to wait 8 hours because in a 0-day attack, that's an infinite amount of time. The other thing that a lot of our customers struggle with, if you go back up to home, Jason, and we're going to look at how we do for event ID. So if you just type in a Intune and then space event, it should give us a list of all the ones that have event ID. So we just listed off a couple. There's event ID 208, there's event ID 820, and they're stored in the event viewer, but all in kind of different locations. So if you knew you wanted to target for when did the Intune server initiate a sync, those are 208s. But you might want to look at for all your devices, and we'll target just those management groups, Jason. But let's run the get Intune, now the get Intune all event IDs, the other one up on top. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
So let's get the relevant IDs for troubleshooting. So we're going to
target just the machines in that management group this time.
So a management group, as I said earlier, is just a way that you define a collection of devices. I'll use config manager terms, but you can assign RBAC to it. So this is just going to target the 4 devices that we have in our labs that are defined as Intune machines. So what we do here is we're gathering all the relevant event IDs that Microsoft has published, and we're putting them in chronological order. So you can see when an event ID 200 happens, for example, the 9th one down, I think, Jason, you can see the event ID 200 happens. That means that a message was sent from the Intune server to the client, and then 202 says that it was received at the client. So that's a new policy, was sent, received, and then 209 is that it ended the connection. So the policy was applied. So you can just walk through in chronological order.
Well, let's say we want to see which ones have that as well. I love the fact I can double click in there and say, just show me all that event ID when that has happened. And I can target that. And this is how often it happens on that machine. And I can scroll down and see the other machines when that's been happening on those machines and so on. Right.
Yes. And Intune is very chatty when it comes to the policies, which is great. There's a lot of value you can get out of that. But we're organizing them all chronological. We're making sure that we get the IDs that are relevant for all Intune, so you can really troubleshoot in a single console across your entire estate. Now, you could open up Event Viewer, you could copy those logs back up, and search holistically in your environment, but it's a bit of a pain. So we bring all that back in real time to your device or to your single console so that you can see it live at the time that it happens.
So in terms of how we're doing, when we have an action or we have a rule that's actually, doing something, we have an agent that's deployed on the endpoint. That's how the 1E platform works. So that agent is out there alongside the Intune agent on the machine. If you already have Nomad, by the way, one of our other products, you already have that agent. It's the 1E client. So that's sitting there. And when we say, tell me this, it's looking at the event logs in this case on that machine and returning that data live. So if that event happened half a second ago, I'm going to get it because I asked now, and I'm getting the data as of now for each of those machines. When I say go and sync and I put in a 3-second stagger, it's going to kick that off within the next 3 seconds. And it's going to go now. It's a now thing. So we're essentially on the device running commands to make Intune do something. And we're on that device. And when a service changes state, like I said, we notice that and we react to that in real time. Real time meaning milliseconds, not seconds or minutes. So, I saw some questions happening in back there, and I was just covering off hopefully a couple of those as we go. We also want to look at, one of the key use cases for Intune is patching. So essentially we have this patch insights tool, which goes and gets from the devices. Again, we're not looking at Microsoft's view of what is going on these machines. We're basically going to the endpoints, finding out what patches are deployed on the endpoints or not, and then basically telling us what the status is for those patches. So essentially, we can look at a given patch. If it has, we can drill into it and understand which machines it's failed on, which machines it's vulnerable on. If it failed, why did it fail? We can drill in and get the details about the patch as well, if it's a cumulative patch. And this one failed to download is what's wrong, okay? So maybe actually for that one, we might want to just deploy the patch. Now, when I say deploy patch, I get to choose where I'm going to deploy patch from. I want you to go to Windows. So if we're using CM in the environment, we can tell it to go get CM. It's still hybrid, maybe that'd be the case. But we want to go to Windows Update. Go Windows Update Remote and download that patch. Now that's actually gone off to request to be approved before it would do that, but you get the idea. We can actually target all of the machines that have failed something, maybe all the machines that's reboot required. There aren't any, but that have deployed the patch and haven't rebooted since. Well, it's not in place until you reboot required. So we can notify the users that we want them to reboot. We can actually have an automated reboot happen if we want to do that. So you can control what it is you want actually the next step to be if you're waiting for that reboot. You can retry downloading or deploying that patch if it failed to deploy or failed to download. And you can understand which machines have yet to actually deploy the patch as well. So we can just target those machines and say, okay, I want to also on that machine, I want to deploy the patch. So, very simple to do these things and schedule and control patching, which is integrating essentially with Windows Update, which is the same thing that Intune integrates with. But when we look at the status here, we're looking at the real-time status, not like we sent out the instruction from Intune, to deploy the patch, and some stage in the next 8 hours, we're going to get the machine will pick that up, and then at some stage after that, it will do it. And sometimes you can see here real-time what's actually happening right now. And if there's a critical patch that you need to get out there, you can understand that. And indeed, if you have a cumulative update, you can understand what is inside that. You can click on and get the details for which patches are in there. So this is something, again, that's not specifically Intune, but we think it's relevant and interesting and valuable to those who are managing Intune, because you're managing patches often with Intune or typically. So that's super relevant. And I'm just aware of the time. The other thing that you get in there is inventory insights. So understanding your environment, right? So we categorize and normalize software inventory. We gather our own inventory. We're not reliant on Intune's. We're looking then to categorize that and say, well, what software do we have out there that's not the latest version, not the latest revision? So we can just subset things really, really quickly and see that. What software do we have that's of that category that's past its end of support? And then we can go and actually get a list of those software titles and understand which machines are out there that have this old version of Edge. It's an old version of Edge. It's no longer supported. This is the one we want to maybe take an action to replace that. So we can then go and actually target those machines and update Edge or do whatever it is we want to do on those endpoints, okay? So this is a way to understand what's out there and group software and understand, I know we were looking at this Adobe stuff. What did we see when we went in there, Ron? We saw that the other day. Saw some really old versions. Because in here you can actually say, I want to see what's the latest known version and when was that ended in support, and is that a licensable piece of software? So these are all free tools, but like this one ended support 10 years ago next week. There's an old version of Adobe that really shouldn't be there. I don't know how many bugs are in that one, how many vulnerabilities, right? So we could target that, and then basically we can tag that machine, and then if you depending on what license you have for the product, you could actually go and update Adobe or remove Adobe or do whatever it is you need to do. Even this version here, like that's DC15, and it ended support in 2020, and from this level there's a 2018 version that you probably should be running instead. All of that data is made available to you, including the usage data, what software is actually being used by users and what software isn't being used by users. Are there any opportunities potentially to reclaim and remove software so you can actually generate some money? Now, we're at time, so we're going to stop sharing right now. Hopefully you got a good view as to what it is, and we're just going to open it up for some questions.
Yeah, Jason, a bunch of good questions coming in. And probably pick maybe 5 or 6 for us to go through. If your question doesn't get answered, please reach out. Please contact us via 1e.com, schedule a demo, reach out if your question doesn't get answered. So let's start. Sean is asking, the sync on demand, are you doing anything special? Is it the same as clicking sync in the Intune console and still in the hands of Microsoft when that sync will happen?
Not fully the way that the Intune syncing from the console. We target the device and we're running commands directly on the device in order to initiate the syncs.
Great. Cool. All right, Tom had a question. Where is the data coming from? Are you pulling with Graph? Is that also how you can force the updates?
So I addressed that earlier on. I saw that question. I mentioned that, yeah, we've got an agent on the endpoint, so we're doing everything from the endpoint's perspective, which is, and it's a real-time response as well. So we're querying the endpoint live to get this, whether it's the event IDs that have just happened, or whether it's to send that instruction down to initiate a sync or whatever. We're doing all that from the endpoint.
Great. All right, and we got a question from Amit. What additional infrastructure is needed to onboard 1E?
Great question. So we're a cloud-first company. So essentially the platform, the UI you saw me walking through, we'll spin that up in the cloud. So you don't need to do that. You need to have the agent, the 1E client that I mentioned, deployed on your devices. You essentially give those clients a URL, which is that cloud instance, and then they're connected up. And then you can see everything that you saw in the demo is all part of the 1E for Intune solution. So really, you got to deploy that client, and that's about it. If you already have Nomad, like I mentioned, you already have that client deployed. If you already have the 1E client as part of the 1E platform, you already have that client deployed. There's about 11 million devices, I think, out there that have that client deployed. And I think 1 in every 6, white collar worker machines in the US already has the client deployed. So do check first if it's out there in your environment. And if it's not, if you're one of those 5 out of every 6 where it's not, I guess, it's just really pushing out. Now that client is tiny, it's 30 or 40 megs. Push it out with Intune by all means. We can then find the machines that are in your network which don't have the client after the client is out there. That Intune failed to get it to because Intune may be having problems on those machines. We can actually identify those machines and get the clients out there through other methods once you've got that toehold in the network. Yeah, it's the 1E client, and you hook it up to the cloud, and that's it, you're done.
Great, thank you, Jason. All right, we got another one around patching. Can we know patching compliance percentage from all of the devices?
Yes, from each device and all devices. You can actually look at it from a device by device perspective. You can look at it across all devices, and you can look at it from a patch by patch perspective. So yeah, any and every way.
Great. Let me pick maybe one more. From Ronald, how are you storing the data collected from the 1E agent? SQL database? Question mark.
Great name. Great name.
Great name, yeah. So essentially that data is stored in the cloud, right? It is actually stored in a SQL database, but you would access it if you wanted to pull it down through APIs, for example. So technically it doesn't matter to you where we store it, but it is in a SQL database, yeah.
Great. And there's a few more in here, but let's wrap it up in concern for everyone's time. If your question didn't get answered, again, please reach out to 1E. We will answer all of your questions. If you need any more information, please visit 1e.com. You can find the white paper that was listed in the QR code before, which I hope you took a screenshot of. If you didn't, go to the 1E for Microsoft Intune solutions. There you go. Jason coming through. Thank you for attending the webinar, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar or in person as we talk and demo the solution. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you all. Take
Thank
care.
you.